And
All
away.
right, welcome to the Sarcasm and Liberty live stream. We had to cancel last night because I wasn't feeling well, and then lo and behold, I am not feeling well for a whole different reason tonight. So we'll try to go as long as I can feel like I can sit up and not just like throw up all over my computer. So all right, so tonight is Pat. If you want to drop into the stream, you're welcome to, man. So tonight I wanted to have, okay, that's fine. I wanted to have a discussion about taxation, and it doesn't have to be like, I don't want to just dwell too much on taxes. More what I want to talk about is how, like, okay, for me, somebody who's like more of a minarchist, I'm not entirely against the idea of social programs. What I'm more against is being forced to pay for them, or the government running them, because the government doesn't do things efficiently ever. So some of the stuff I'd like to talk about is, if we were to turn over social programs to the private sector, or like charities and stuff like that, or how you can fund a social program voluntarily. Now, excuse me, typically when I have these conversations, people are always like, well, if you don't have taxes and this and that, and then my usual response is like, well, that's fine, we don't need this and that. But because they'll say things, like, well, we do need, and I'm fine. Like, I'm not against having like a safety net for people, because life throws a lot of, curveballs at you. So, you can't always plan for everything. And I do feel like charities are a good stopgap for stuff like that. And typically what the response I get is like, well, we can't rely on charities, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you realize if people weren't paying taxes, they'd have a lot more money to funnel into charities. And if you have like charity organizations that are legit, you don't have this black hole of money, like the bureaucracy black hole, where so much money is just getting wasted on like people like filing paperwork and just stupid shit. Anybody who's worked in the government knows how much money just gets wasted on absolutely nothing. It's insane. So like the meme I have is, we had on Sarcasm Liberty that I wrote was, you can give a man $5, or you can pay the government $5 to give the same man 50 cents. I'm like, which one sounds more like compassion to you? The amount of money you're giving, okay, I shouldn't even say giving to the government. The amount of money the government takes from you isn't the amount of money that's going to the people in need. So, I'm always like, does that really seem like a good idea? Like, if you're wanting to do these social programs, is it really a good idea to just have so much money get sucked up into nothing and just wasted? Like, there's got to be a more efficient way to do that. And, typically the more efficient way to do things like that is the private sector, through charities. And then like one of the things I like to bring up is the box top program. Like my daughter, she goes to a private school and they have uniforms, and they have the saying where if you put them 50 box tops, you get a dress down pass for a day where you get to just wear regular clothes. Just this past year, I'm going to say we've probably given about like 250 box tops to the school. Like we've gone out of our way to start buying brands that have box tops on them. We collect box tops from like family and friends that get them but don't have anybody to give them to. And that's what I'm always saying, because I was in this whole conversation one time, and these people were like, it was about the box tops, and they're like, well, it's really sad that the government does such a poor job that we have to rely on corporations and blah blah blah. And I'm like, shouldn't you be kind of looking at more of an optimistic view that when the government fails you, corporations and people step in and voluntarily implement a program where you have people working together, people, the corporations don't have to do this. And then the people don't have to submit the box tops, but you do, and that's what I always tell people. Like, you'd be surprised. Like, you can go up and find a list. It's a lot of, like, I think it's General Mills, I want to say, that does it, not Kellogg's. The cereal, they do that. I think it's General Mills, I want to say. And then, like, even like Totino's Pizza, I didn't realize that they had box tops. It's like underneath the fold on the pizza packaging, and it's like the packaging isn't cardboard anymore, so it's like you have to like cut it out really weird. But yeah, even that has box tops. There's so many things that have box tops these days. So I'm like, if you start looking up, and then even if you don't have kids, save up your box tops and then just go give it to your local school. Like, just go drop them off. If most schools will take them and use them. So I mean, like, it's just, that's a minor thing, because the thing I always got is like, well, it's a pretty insignificant amount of money. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's easy to think that it, like, if you're thinking of yourself as one person that would be submitting like 2 or 3 a year, but like, if you think of an entire community constantly saving them, constantly giving them to the schools, think of how much money schools could raise off of that alone. It's a significant amount. You got to think in like the mass community quantities of stuff. And that's where a lot of people they have a very pessimistic view of our communities, where they don't think charities and stuff like that, or the communities, could pick up the slack. And I'll give everybody a chance. I got one more thing I want to bring up, and then I'll turn it over to you guys for some input. When I was living in Wisconsin, and my first kid was born, we weren't making a lot of money, and we had a hefty hospital bill. So they were like, well, here's this program where it was the community, a bunch of people funneled money into this program, and they just donated and donated. And what they would do is, people who had large hospital bills, you fill out a piece of like a paperwork for like how much money you're making, how much money you owe, and then they would just pay off a chunk of your hospital bill. And I'm like, I always tell people, like, if you have a large hospital bill, like, go talk to your hospital, because there's more than likely whatever hospital you're going to has a program like that. It's not uncommon for, part of the problem is people don't know about stuff like that. And then a lot of people just don't realize, like, if you are a person that ever complains about charities not being able to like pick up the slack of the government when it comes to like social programs, and you don't donate to charities, shut the fuck up. Like, you don't realize you're part of the problem. Like, you can't complain about something that you're unwilling to engage in, So yeah, I'll let you guys kind of jump in a little bit there about, for a minute, I want to talk about programs like what we could do for like charity wise, or like private sector wise, to pick up the slack of like, if we were to take away government social programs and turn it over to the private sector. Did you guys
start off?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, if you think about it, like, you see a lot of that happening. I mean, it's actually quite common. I mean, it's on like it's like really low level, and it's in small groups. Like, for example, a little league team holding a car wash, or selling candy bars or something to raise money for uniforms or equipment. Churches are the biggest example.
When growing up, my family was pretty poor, and we went to food pantry run by the Lutheran church, and I get food there. Government didn't help us out there. And then to support that, guess what I did? As a Boy Scouts, I did the scouting for food thing, where we went to drop off the bags in 1 week, and then the next week we went and picked up all the food and brought it to the church. Like, I I did my part. You know, I had to participate in the program. I gave back to the program.
Yeah, you even see schools doing. I mean, schools will hold food drives around certain times of the year, and they will donate the food to a pantry, or they'll distribute it somehow. So I mean, you see it.
I would say that just how many people, like public school especially. I mean, like just think elementary school is a bigger time where I remember doing this, but most people, if you think back, you probably remember at least one time during your time in school where they were having some kind of like a canned food drive or something. It's extremely common. I'm sorry, I keep jumping in. You're making good points.
Yeah, you're fine. I mean, you see a lot of voluntary things going on a really routine basis. As far as bigger things, I mean, it wouldn't be quite that simple, but it still can be done, and it can be done by cutting out the middleman. The middleman being government.
Yep.
And besides, I mean, as far as some of the things that the government provides, like when the government builds things, the government's not building it; they're contracting out a company to do it for them, and they're paying the company. Why wouldn't you just pay the company directly? The community.
It makes more sense, to be honest.
Fire departments, you don't see this in cities, but in like more rural areas, you see a lot of volunteer fire departments, and they raise their own money. I mean, for everything that they need.
Yeah, I grew up in a. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, where do you think all those firemen strippers come from? Raise money.
No, like for me though, I grew up in a small town, volunteer fire department. It was funded by the community, not by the government.
Yeah.
I got a list here. One of the things I do want to go into is volunteer ways of funding social programs that aren't necessarily like ways that, like, if it was run by the government, that we could still maintain social programs without taxation, where it was something, because I always bring it up, taxation is theft, and they're like, well, without taxation, we can't have social programs. I'm like, well, that's not true. Go ahead.
Roads,
yeah, it's always roads, and because roads were completely non-existent before taxation. Now, here's a list. I want to go through this list, and then one by one we'll discuss each topic. It's a six. Now, and if anybody's ever curious, just Google how to fund the government without taxes, and a bunch of you'll see message boards and articles and all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of great ideas out there. I typically bring this stuff up because I'm always, the things are always like, well, we won't have this stuff without taxation. I'm like, well, it's just not true. You can have, if you need to have your government, there are voluntary ways to fund it. But part of that thing is you have to massively cut back on the government. You don't need such an overbloated government, but you can have voluntary ways to fund them. One of the things the article brings up, and that I've often brought up, is there's a lottery. Now I'm going to read off exactly what they wrote here. Of course,
Powerball. Sorry.
Well, like a government run, but yeah. Basically, yeah. Of course, in a libertarian republic, government would not hold a monopoly on lotteries. But nonetheless, lotteries could be used to generate revenue through voluntary participation. Government could use a specific proportion of lotteries revenue for funding, and one or more lucky participants could win the rest. The founding fathers used this method. George Washington signed lottery tickets to raise money for public infrastructure, roads. But yeah, that's one of the things that frequently gets brought up, is like a government-run lottery where, just look at the lottery industry and how massively successful it is and how much money gets funneled into there. and that's all voluntary. You know, people aren't forced to go buy lottery tickets. There's probably a lot of people that shouldn't be buying lottery tickets that do, but it's voluntary. Yeah. But it's voluntary, you know. You make the choice to buy the lottery ticket, and that's something. And I want some input from you guys. So like, we're going to talk about this isn't in like a minarchist society where government is massively reduced, and we're not talking. It's more, let's say, we're talking more like state level. Like federal government would be significantly reduced to what it should be, but to fund social programs like some like stopgaps, like I don't want to say Social Security necessarily, but like some healthcare stuff or like disability, things like that, where people are like even like food stamp, where people like genuinely need some kind of help. I don't want to get into the specifics of what the social programs would be because I feel like that's a whole nother discussion, which we could even have tonight. But if we're talking about funding some social programs, using a lottery as a method, what do you guys think?
Yeah, here in Missouri, they have a thing called the Missouri Education Lottery, and money raised from that goes towards education. Person that wins, gets the jackpot or whatever you call it, but money raised from that goes and helps pay for public education here in the state. So yeah,
yeah. Well, what do you think, Amos?
I'm actually Googling what the Minnesota lottery goes to.
All right.
One sec here. Where does it go? It just says games. It doesn't tell me what, like... Oh, here we go. Where the money goes. Oh, no.
What?
It goes to the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. Dang it.
Oh, slush fund.
Dang it. It's got a picture of the loon, the common loon, which is our state bird. It says, playing our part. More than $2.7 billion has been generated is to help restore, enhance, and protect high-quality habitat for Minnesota wildlife. Oh, Jesus. Dang it. See, Minnesota is a leftist virtue signaling state when it comes to taxes and incentives and all this stuff. Yeah, if that's what you're wondering.
Well, and I would say though, like we could, get more, like if we're gonna do something like that, we can actually make sure it's more towards funding things that would matter, not just I don't know. This is part of just pulling back the government where we're not funding things that aren't necessary or that the government doesn't really have any business in messing with. So I do think a discussion we might have tonight, if I'm feeling up for it, and maybe touch on it a little bit, but it'd probably be best to have this for like a whole nother stream of just talking about like what legitimate social programs there are to actually keep and stuff like that.
Well,
go ahead.
Did we want to talk about the corporations?
Yeah, we can do that tonight.
The actual corporation.
Yeah.
Did you see?
I'm gonna get through my list.
Okay.
So I think lottery is a legit possibility if we're talking. Now, the second thing on the list is going to be more. It's not going to be as like agreeable. A lot of people are going to be. It's going to be a little bit more like I don't know about that because it has the word tax in it. Consumption tax.
No.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. No. And I figure a tax on spending on goods or services. A value-added tax is a tax which is based on the value added to a product at each stage of production. For example,
that is not stealing.
Well, for examples, if a retailer were to buy a shirt for $5 and then sell it for $10, the tax would apply to the $5 difference. Each stage of the production process would incur tax, leaving a final product with a price incorporating those taxes. A sales tax is simply a tax on the consumer at the point of purchase of goods or services. An excise tax applies to the sale of a specific good or services by quantity, such as a per gallon gasoline tax. In each instance, the consumer is choosing to buy the good or service. So it's different from the idea of a sales tax. But it's still because it's a tax, it's going to be more
but I mean
controversial.
But that's really a tax that you consent to, though, because I mean you're consenting to it with every purchase.
Yeah, I'm not like as hardcore against sales tax as I am income tax or property tax.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. I mean, you know, there's other forms of tax or theft. I don't see sales tax or even consumption tax in that way. Mm-hmm. So I'm fine with that one.
Yeah, I think I do feel like, though, I mean, there's other stuff on the list, like that would be very low on my, like, yeah, that sounds good. That's probably at the bottom of my list of like, let's do that. Because I'm not a big fan of just tax in general. And I feel like that could lead to some, you know, government overstep and stuff like that. Is there, you guys want to, because you look like you had like a little epiphany moment when I was reading that, Amos. So I don't know if you had it. Oh, okay. Like, yeah.
I get it, but still tax.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm not like trying to get all ANCAP or whatever.
No. It's understandable.
Taxes, I think anything, because we're talking about, like, you know, you're talking about how there is consent at each stage of producing, this product. However, is it really consent if it's just like you could say living in America is consent of income tax?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think what you're getting at, and an argument could be made that like you have to buy products to live, like, you know, you have to buy food, you have to buy clothes. You know, I would say if we were to do like a consumption tax more on things, like if this is something we were going to implement, I would say more towards like luxury items. I would be less inclined to be like have an issue with, because you don't need luxury items. But then we kind of get into that pitfall of what constitutes a luxury item. So it can lead to some shady areas. I'm just
applying the basic principle that whatever transaction between myself and another person that is consensual shouldn't be. I mean, I think taxing something is the same as sort of a means of paying a license to do something. Mm-hmm. Like, I can, if I, you know, like driving a car, well, I need to pay a license fee. I need all this other stuff to license me to drive. It's like, well, like I've already paid for the roads. I've already paid for the police to keep us all safe. Mm-hmm. Now I have to pay for permission to drive.
Yeah.
In the same way, you're paying into sort of basically the government saying you have to pay us for an amount to basically let us know that we played a role in your transaction, which is supposed to be between you and me. You know, I'm buying something from you. Why should the government be involved in that?
I would say too, though, like to build on that, part of the issue I think that comes into play is at what point does the government become involved in that transaction? Like,
I think nowhere should it be involved.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like if this was implemented, because I would say like for me, I go to a lot of comic conventions. Now, what are comic conventions? Pretty much everything's under the table, basically. You know, people are producing artwork, people are producing books. we do not charge tax. I would say the majority of people at a Comic-Con do not charge tax. Most of the people you see that will charge tax will be actual like comic book company, like, you know, comic book stores that set up there, and like they kind of have to because they have to file taxes and stuff. But most people, they don't charge tax on their product. The government doesn't get involved in that. So you would kind of come in and be like, well, you know, does the government, are they supposed to get involved in that? Like, is it necessary for them to? Is it ethical for them to? Which products do you consider consumption tax like needs to be on? Because I would say, and to kind of agree with Amos here, like if I write a book and I make the book, and you know, I
or even just anyone involved in producing that book.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say, like, on a small personal scale here, I write a book, I go through self-publishing, you know, and I make my book, and I want to sell my book, and I go somewhere and I sell it. You know, like, just, you know, should the government be allowed to be like, well, you have to pay tax for your production of this book, you know, because I'd be like, well, I produced the book, you guys had no part in this. So yeah, I could definitely agree there, like that, you know, like if you kind of think of it on the small scale, you could definitely see where it gets really shady. So like if you kind of just, you know, keep building on that, it does seem less and less reasonable. Yeah. Oh, okay. I feel that was a good discussion on that. Our third one, and this is a point I always bring up when you hear people saying, you know, like, well, companies should pay more taxes. I mean, it's like, you can pay more taxes. You know, you don't have to. If you complain about people not paying enough taxes, but you get your tax return, aren't you, like, you know, taking money away from people in your mind? Voluntary tax.
There is a way that you can actually donate to the U.S. government.
Yeah,
yeah. Donate to the Treasury.
Point number 3: voluntary tax. In a community, town, or city, a voluntary per-person tax will be implemented. Services provided by the town, such as fire and police services, could only be utilized by persons who had paid the tax. Those who choose not to would be left to fend for themselves, hire private services, or depend on volunteer services. With such a system, an introductory tax rate could be implemented, and with time, as more people join, the cost per person would decline. I have an issue with this because it does kind of feel like an ultimatum, but I would feel like, you know,
I have an issue with it too.
Yeah, here's my thing though, is like, if I didn't have to pay for police services and I was able to have a gun and they're like, well, you have to fend for yourself, I'd be like, well, that's fucking fine. I feel more comfortable fending for myself than relying on you.
Yeah.
But like fire services, you know, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
So it's a little iffy there. So yeah, let Mike, I want to hear what you, because you have an issue with this. I want to hear what you got to say.
Well, my issue with it is that it's not going to work because no one's going to donate. And all right, so take this tax bill, for example, that the Republicans passed a few months ago. Leading up to its vote, and then even after it passed, you had people on the left who are complaining about it, saying that's less taxes, that's less government revenue. And, you know, you always hear this one thing from the left. They sound so, I don't want to say elitist, but they sound pretentious when they say this. I have no problem giving a little extra to the government. Well, you can still give a little extra to the government, but since you're bitching about this tax bill, you're obviously not going to. So I'm just going to say that as much as people love to talk about how great taxes are and how great that, you know, we have a tax system and the government has ways of paying for things because we have taxes, a voluntary tax is not going to work because no one's going to donate to it. Everybody's going to sit around. They're going to bitch about, oh, the government doesn't have enough money to. But well, give your money to the government then if you don't feel they don't have enough. Voluntary tax won't work.
Pat says, and I'm gonna think that like it's not necessarily like you don't get to partake in like fire services or something, but he says you could give government incentives for people who get towards the voluntary tax. Now I feel like saying, you know, like you don't get to have fire services if you don't pay for the tax is just a downright shitty thing. And I'm like, well, if you're having like a volunteer fire department and stuff like that, it seems a little ridiculous.
Well,
but
think of it this way.
Go ahead.
Should you get electricity if you don't pay for it?
I feel like that's different, though.
Is it?
It's not. Electricity isn't an emergency service.
I mean, can you say that with a straight face to us Minnesotans?
I don't. I live in Indiana, so I can't.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, think of it like there are certain things where we've been accustomed to pay for, and other things we're not accustomed to paying for, and somehow taxes take care of police and fire departments, but somehow doesn't take care of other things, and it's like, so if I don't pay my electric bill, they cut the lights out. You know, I can't do this live stream. If I don't pay for internet, which some people are thinking you should have, you know, that should be a need in a world like today. If I don't pay for that, I don't get it. If I don't pay for my cell phone bill, I don't have it. So, but there's a reason we're paying for things like electricity, like internet, like a phone bill, because they have plans that are affordable and valuable to us. Which I think could tie into the next you know.
I would have to just disagree, at least on the terms of emergency services. Like, if you don't pay your electricity, like that's more of a responsibility of paying your electricity, you know, like, but if your house burns down, kind of shitty to be like, well, we're not going to help you because you didn't pay your taxes. Like, we're just going to let your house burn down. That seems.
We're not going to turn your lights on if you don't.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, and it's completely possible in today's society to function without electricity. We choose not to because it's far more convenient to have electricity. It is not possible to function with your house burning down.
I mean, it's also possible to function without clothes.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, there's a lot of things.
Clothes aren't a need, though. Like clothes.
I think what Amos is saying is that, I mean, we have all these necessities already that we're paying for, and we pay for them out of pocket. You know, I mean, you know, taxes don't keep the lights on. Taxes don't make it possible for us to do this live stream right now. I think that's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, there's just we have been, I guess, to get not to sound too weird, we've been conditioned to believe certain things we pay out of pocket and certain things we don't pay out of pocket. Well, we do just through taxes.
But do you think how would you believe though that a fire department should be funded? Local fire department.
You could have, instead of having a government run it, you could have some means of like a group plan. So you live in a city where they cover, and you have a group plan that you pay into. And so instead of going through the middleman of, you know, City Hall, you have them. You're just like, okay, you live in this area, which has this risk factor, which and you're this close to us. So if we factor in the average risk of a person like you being in a fire, so it's like fire insurance essentially.
So would you say it's fair if somebody doesn't pay into it, the fire department has no responsibility to go put out their house fire? Because that's what I'm getting at. It seems ethically wrong to me to be like, you don't get to have your house fire put out because you didn't pay into it. It seems like if
does my car get repaired if I don't pay insurance? Whoop, where'd he go?
Oh, we lost him again.
What's he doing?
I mean, but couldn't there also be like, couldn't there be like, ways for like, instead of, not like, well, you didn't pay, so we're not going to your house, but ways for.
Well, maybe they just bill them later on.
It covers the entire community. Is there something possible like that?
Something's going on with my computer tonight. It keeps flipping out. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Where I ended off is like just a straight up yes or no. Is it reasonable for somebody who doesn't pay into the local fire service for them to be denied, like if their house is burning down, like the fire department doesn't have to go put out that fire?
It is unreasonable, but there are a lot of, you could argue in many different ways to say, well, you don't have like, there's state laws that basically are put in place to ensure certain things don't happen. But when it really comes down to it, there's a lot of things people could consider necessities that are just as necessary as having a fire department at the ready for you. There are other things. We could talk the same thing with health insurance.
Yeah.
We still have emergency rooms.
I would say for me personally, I would say if you are part of a community and there is a fire service, it's a voluntary service, like it's stupid to not pay into it. Like, but I would also like if my neighbor, their house was burning down and they didn't pay into it, I would feel bad about being like, yeah, they shouldn't have, like, that's fine for their house to burn down.
Why don't you pay for them then?
I don't want to pay for them. I'm going to pay for myself.
Well, how selfish are you then? I'm not saying that to you, but think about this.
I'm saying
people are so virtuous to think government should do all this, why don't they do it themselves?
No, I'm saying though, like, I'm not saying they should or not. I'm saying I feel like I would have an ethical dilemma.
There isn't really a dilemma. It's just
for me. There's not a perfect answer because it feels like it's a hard thing. It's hard to. That's part of the thing. If to get to like the ultimate point, communities take work from the entire community. If you don't want to be a part of that community, you don't want to give into that community, then separate yourself from the community. Go live outside of the community. Go live by yourself. There are people who live out in the country, and if their house burns down, the closest fire department's like 20 minutes away. It's not like it's going to do them any good. Where my parents lived, closest fire department was like 40 minutes away where they used to live.
Right.
But that was a choice they made. Luckily their house never burned down. But that was also the thing is, they didn't really live in a city, so they weren't paying into like city taxes and stuff. So,
right. If you're in a car accident in the middle of nowhere, you can sit here and kind of figure, well, just as a matter of circumstance, things can happen, and you just have to do your best to. I think allowing an incentive into things like fire departments, police departments, hospitals.
I feel like calling it an incentive, I feel like the way it was phrased in the thing makes it sound more like an ultimatum, and maybe it was just the way it was.
It's not an ultimatum. It's just a means by which you're providing a service.
Yeah, I agree.
We're eliminating the middleman of government.
The way it was worded sounded like so iffy to me. Like, okay, like if I'm living in a city and I have like, okay, like just let's say police services and fire services. I would pay into fire services. I hope my house never burns down, but overall, I would want a functioning fire department. I would not pay into police services because I would carry a gun with me and be like, you know, I could probably fend for myself better than they can fend for me. Mostly because I can immediately react as opposed to waiting for them to come help me.
They have no obligation to protect you anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, like I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I guess I'm just being argumentative for the sake of being argumentative. But no, I mean, like I do agree. Like it is a service, and you know, like if it's not paid into the people doing it, can't even do that.
And here's the thing: like, if it's
they have fire trucks, if people aren't paying for fire trucks.
Here's the thing: in the scale of a city or a small town, if you eliminate the middleman of government, you eliminate all the administration, the bureaucratic nonsense, all the paperwork between your tax, it becomes so much cheaper, and there could probably be even a better incentive to be more efficient as firemen. Now there's an actual profit incentive to create a better, smarter fire department.
Then also, I mean, like part of the thing though is like where I was saying earlier, like communities take work. If the entire community isn't willing to work together to have a functioning fire department, it becomes more expensive for the individuals that want to.
And here's the thing. I think this is kind of sort of at the foundation of just a more libertarian or minarchist sort of ideas. You have communities. You're not having sort of governments. You have communities that have an actual vested interest in creating an environment that is efficient, productive, and even profitable, depending upon how well they do. I mean, what if you had all of your services, everything in a city, is all privatized? Now you go in there and you have your whatever, you have your credit card. You go in there, you swipe to like stay in the city for a day, so you pay the fees of being there for a day. You get into a car accident, you know, and then there's a fire, and then there's all this stuff, and then you have like the best medical care in the country because the city prides himself on being efficient. Whereas a government-run,
well, and I mean, like, I'm not arguing for a pro-government thing. I just, like, communities do take work, and if the entire community is not willing to function as a community, I mean, the entire community working together. I guess the pro of the voluntary tax thing is, and I don't think we should. I think part of the thing is like calling it voluntary tax. I don't think it should be considered a tax necessarily. It's just like a voluntary donation. It's like pooling funds as a community. But one of the upsides to it is you don't have to pay for services you don't feel like you do need. Just to make the comparison, because I feel like you were making some of these comparisons earlier, though, but there is the risk. I mean, if you don't feel like you have to worry about your house burning down, don't pay for the fire. It's the same as like if you do not feel like you're going to get into a car accident, you get what's the minimal insurance you get? I forget.
You need
liability. You get liability insurance. Like if you don't feel like if you're not worried about certain things, you don't get certain insurance, or you don't get certain. If you don't think you're going to get sick, you don't get health insurance, things like that.
Well, think of it this way too. If you get like a brand new car, you're recommended to get comprehensive insurance. To cover replacing the car, covering the financial payments if you're financing the car, glass repair, roadside assistance, all this stuff. You don't have to pay for that, but you do because you want those services. In the same way, maybe if you go into a city, maybe the city is profitable enough with their services that they can allow basic fire like prevention or whatever. But then you could pay for a higher tier plan to get, fire hazard evaluation or whatever. I mean, you can add in these things and you create a more comprehensive way of actually making it both efficient but also meet the needs of the people.
And that's part of the thing with just like allowing communities to have that control too over their specific fire services or specific police services, if they choose to have those things. You're creating competition between cities too, to make your community better and more efficient. You're going to want to have more people part of that. So like you want to be better than your surrounding communities. This part of what like the whole idea of having the states and stuff, like states are supposed to be able to be competitive with each other and like have their own laws and their own ways of doing things. And but like just on these like small city scales, that's part of where like you need to be able to be competitive, provide the best services. Something you said, I hadn't even thought of it until now, but it's a question that I'm curious as to like what you guys would say though. If we're talking in a society where you have to pay into services to get those services, if you were visiting a community, how does that work?
I just mentioned that you can have like a visitor fee.
Okay.
So you would basically call up the city, some sort of central, maybe you have a firm that is specializing for tourism, and they would say, okay, we're going to calculate like a visitor pass fee for if you enter this country. I'm sorry, not country, but the city. You have like a base rate of like all the services depending on what you want.
Yeah. I don't know. That seems like a lot of like what if you're just driving through from point A to point B?
What if since cities are so big, if like you broke the city down into sections, and then like if you're going to have like a privatized fire department, you break it down into sections to where one fire department, kind of like how they do precincts now.
Yeah.
But
you essentially have franchised fire departments.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, franchised fire departments.
Well, yeah, and that's fine. I just like what if I'm just driving through a city and like my car catches on fire or something? I don't know. I'm not trying to I don't know. I feel like having so much work you have to put into like visiting the city kind of restricts travel a little bit. Like you can't just go to the city or like going to visit my parents every time, or my parents coming to visit here. That'd be a lot of work to have to put in just for them to come visit our grandkids.
Would it be as much work to have a government do it all?
Yeah, but think about it though. Like,
would it be as cheap?
I have my friends. They come here like every other week. They live in Ohio. I just can't imagine like every time they want to come here, they have to like do paperwork. I don't know. And here's the thing. There's probably like a better way of even doing that. I don't have a solution, to be honest. It just seems, I don't know. It seems too bureaucratic for me. And I feel like that's the things I want to avoid.
Actually, it would be less bureaucratic if you look at it, because you would just deal directly with the city you're in, the roads you're dealing with.
Yeah, but you don't have to do anything to go visit a city now.
Yeah, because you have a bigger bureaucracy running all of that.
I guess. I don't know. I just feel.
I mean,
it just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't say. I can't quite explain it, to be honest.
Wouldn't there be like less administration though with this method than?
Yeah, you would just have businesses that offer you affordable ways to travel. I mean, you could basically call up a nationwide travel agency. Hey, I'm going down these roads. I'm going to these areas. This is my travel path. Is there anything I should be considering? And then they could quote you a price like, well, we know these cities charge these fees. Here's our database, this, that, and the other. And then they go, boom. Mm-hmm. And then you go through there.
I would hate the fuck out of having to do that, to be honest.
Or maybe it's just way easier. I mean, it'd be as easy as buying a plane ticket.
Well, I mean, the thing with bureaucracy is that, I mean, there's like so many levels to it, and there's so much administrative action with it. And I just think that if government's not involved, you're going to have a lot less of that.
like what I'm hearing though, I feel like I'd just be treating out like one bureaucracy for another. I don't know.
I mean, would you rather a bureaucracy that is inefficient, expensive?
I would rather have no bureaucracy.
No. But I mean, would you rather have like a pure bureaucratic nightmare that is more expensive, more wasteful, more corrupt, or would you have an organization that is efficient, cheap?
But I don't feel like these are my only two choices. There's got to be another way where I don't have to call a travel agent to drive down to India.
I mean, we could have Ancapistan and just drive around with guns like Mad Max.
It just like, I mean, like I go to a lot of comic conventions, so I just get up and I drive to them. I just can't imagine every time I have to make calls and I have to get passes.
And then you drive across potholes. And then you're dealing with.
It doesn't sound any better to me. No, it doesn't sound any better to me. Like I shouldn't feel like. I feel like that would just restrict travel, though. Like
you're paying for licensing to drive on a road you paid for.
What I'm feeling like though is like I have to ask permission to go to somebody else's city.
No. You're not asking for permission. You're asking for a rate of what it costs. Because here's the thing. If cities are more efficient and cheaper than being taxed, you could actually save money.
And then you have to like pay just to like drive through somebody's city on the way to another city. Like it just seems insane. It seems like a nightmare.
Let's say Amos here in Minnesota, single, makes a certain wage. His taxes are the same. Claims no dependents, 0. On the tax return form.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's an Amos across the country that has the same wage, but then he travels more. So he's using the roads more. He's actually getting more of his money's worth of what he's getting out of his taxes than I am. Instead, you have a system that now is you're paying what you're using instead of paying for everyone else.
No, I'm not against that. It just seems like having to put so much effort just to drive somewhere seems like there's got to be, and I'm not saying I have a solution, but this solution I'm hearing sounds it doesn't sit right with me. I feel like there's got to be a better way to fund things, but without making it feel like you have to go through so much work every time you want to drive somewhere.
Maybe it's not that. Maybe it'll be made into a system that is not that crazy. I mean, all you would do is
no. Here's the thing. Like your overall thing, I don't disagree with. The thing of I don't know, the effort you have to put in just to go to another city seems a bit.
No. You're not calling to go ahead. Let's say you're so let's say all the roads are toll roads.
Mm-hmm. That actually is going to tie into the next point I have.
So let's say all the roads are toll roads. So then I'm going to a city, and it's essentially a giant toll, like a toll city. You're going through there. You have to pay a certain fee because there is a risk that something could happen, and you need to use the services. So they charge you for that. So you have some sort of credit card, from a bank, and you go on Google Maps, and Google Maps will say you're approaching this city. Their pass-through fee is this much. You're approaching this road. To drive this long on a road, you need to pay this fee. If you travel more, you pay more. If you go to more cities, you pay more. If you stay home all day, you don't pay that much.
If we're talking about it's like a toll before you get into a city and go through, that's I'm fine with.
That's what I'm saying though.
It takes out a lot of that effort. And then it's just like with the Easy Pass or whatever. Like when you go through toll roads. Okay, that I feel like. And it's probably just because I'm feeling sick tonight and I wasn't quite grasping it right away. But yes, I get what you're saying now. Okay, got it. I would like to from that segue into point number 4, which is usage fees. And
exactly, I was saying is basically the whole society would be sort of. A capitalist privatized system.
I kind of feel like you made the entire point here. So I'm going to read off what they wrote. Tolls on roads, parking meters, city water, sewage access, and ambulance services, which bill for usage, are all current examples of people volunteering to use government services or infrastructure for a fee. This is a much fairer way to generate the revenue needed, to maintain and operate government infrastructure than one which taxes those who do not need or use those services. That goes back to what you were saying, Amos. This model can be extended to trash removal and fire services. That goes back to what you were saying about two people, one both paying the same amount of taxes for the roads, one using them far more. So yes, if we were just kind of like to simplify like tolls and stuff like that,
right,
I'm fine with. I'm actually like totally in agreement with that. It makes a lot of sense because you're paying for what you use. Yep. I feel, and it's probably like it's probably just my mind is like trash tonight. So I don't think I was quite grasping what you were saying right away.
Basically, yeah. If you stay home all day, you only pay so much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you work a job that's in town, and that's that. But then if you're someone that travels more,
yeah.
I mean, because like I said, the example of someone who is, you know, two individuals paying the same amount of tax, but one person's actually using what he's paying for. Because my tax dollar is paying for a road that I'm never going to drive on in my entire life.
Like for me, I go to Indianapolis. It's the state capital of Indiana. I go there a couple times a year for like comic conventions. So if I had to pay a toll every time I went into Indiana and that toll went towards their roads or towards maintaining this and that, I would not feel like I was being ripped off because I'm going there to their city and using their roads and using services here and there. And I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. So that's not something I feel like I have a problem with. Like I would be interested to hear somebody's arguments against it. But yeah, like for me personally, it makes sense. You're paying for what you use. You're not paying for the overall thing. Yeah, makes sense to me.
I mean, you're paying for what you use, and you're utilizing for what is available to you. I mean, you said what you were saying going to Comic-Con, like you want to go to like everything in that whole thing. You pay for a pass, you know, to go to Comic-Con, or you know, being in Indianapolis, you want to go to everything. You want to get your money's worth. We can understand that when it comes to events and things we're interested in, we actually care about. But then when it comes to taxes, there's a disconnect of how we perceive money being spent.
I would feel like too, though, it kind of goes back to competition. Making your city more appealing, making people want to come to your city, because the more people that come to your city, you can
the more money you can make.
Yeah, also you can actually potentially lower the toll amount.
Exactly.
If you get more people coming into your city, you have a higher flow, you get a bigger cash flow, and having your city have more things there and a smaller toll rate makes your city more appealing to people. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, what's her name? Ayn Rand would talk about charity. She would mention about how like helping people, like charity is not so much like just giving people money.
Yeah.
Like giving them a job is a better means of charity and actually helping people, because you're giving them a means to produce, be productive, make money, and actually make a difference. Whereas if you just give someone money, you only temporarily offset the issue. So what you were like when your example of emergency services, yeah, you can temporarily help people, which is fine, but in the long run, you want to empower that person to be able to actually effectively contribute to a system that is productive, efficient, and even profitable.
Well, and just going to like police services, you just think about it though. If you have a community where people carried weapons, were responsible gun owners, and were prepared to defend themselves if they needed to, how much would that significantly reduce the need for a police force? Like citizens being responsible for their own safety as much as possible. I do feel like the amount of like, I feel like honestly, this is the problem people have with like a minarchist or an ANCAP society, is it significantly increases individual responsibility. You suddenly have to be more responsible for yourself and for your family. Yeah. And people don't like that. They don't have the safety net of the government, which is a terrible safety net. But, you have to take care. I feel like we talked about this. Was it Tuesday? But we talked about something like we were talking about healthcare. Maybe it wasn't Tuesday. It might have been last week. I cannot even remember this. Yeah. Was it Tuesday?
Healthcare Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, because I know we were talking about I can't remember who brought it up, but it might have been Tim actually, about you have to, it's your responsibility to take care of yourself, to eat right, to exercise and things like that, and when you have a society where you don't have to worry about paying for your healthcare bills and stuff like that, you kind of have incentive to not really give a fuck about taking care of yourself anymore.
The best kind of society is where a reasonable amount of people understand the value of what they're producing, take pride in it, and in turn contribute to us back to the society in a way that is beneficial to everyone else. Everyone's needs are being met through producing.
Well, I think that's the thing.
It's you're incentivizing production instead of seizing the means of production.
That's something people kind of tend to have a misconception about an ANCAP society. That it's not every man for itself. It's communities working together.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people because there's no government. Everybody thinks it's just community, every man for himself kind of thing. We're no, it's you have to have cooperation. You have to have some people working together.
You can have a system of organization. I'll call it that.
Yeah.
Because you can have something that is like government but is not government. It's actually more efficient because we're talking about these communities, these cities, these means where people are actually you have a city that is essentially a giant business. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you guys. Have you guys heard of the project Lieberland?
I don't recall.
Project what?
It's a nation building project. Not to be confused with actual nation building with countries.
Just Lieberland, picturing something in my head, and I'm hoping it's going to be what I'm picturing. Go ahead.
There's a small piece of land about 0.2 of a square mile between Serbia and Croatia that has been long disputed, and basically they don't give a fuck about that land. However, because of that, it's been difficult. There's a group of people that are basically negotiating the rights to the land to form a micronation known as Lieberland, a libertarian nation. When you become a citizen of Lieberland, you are essentially a shareholder in the business of the nation of Lieberland. You buy into the country, you have citizenship. It's going to be sort of like a tourist sort of libertarian paradise where the country is a business. So the goal is once it's probably decades down the line. Once the country is formed, they build an airport. They don't have to worry about the disputes with the land because Brooke went to the UK Libertarian Party conference and got an update from them on it. They're basically they're still discussing because there's a lot of disputes between Croatia and Serbia that it's difficult because they're not letting them go in there via those countries. So the goal is to basically get in there, build an airport or an airstrip so they can just go straight there instead of dealing with all these other countries. And then they actually have Bitcoin millionaires ready to dump money into this as an investment.
Yeah.
So,
can you send me a link or something on that? I want to read some more about that. That sounds amazing. I feel like if I'm supposed to research it by myself, I'm totally fucking forget. So, I'm my mind is all over the place tonight. That sounds amazing, though. I'd like to read more about it.
They're not updating much on the internet because it's still such a small thing. I just put it in our chat.
Okay.
The Wikipedia link. There is a website for it.
Right. But I'm gonna bookmark that so I don't forget. Thanks.
But yeah, I think that is one way. Where you have a city that operates in a way that incentivizes being a producer rather than just forcefully taking the fruits of your labor to this monstrosity of just nonsense machine, you know?
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. Like, it would be neat though, because like, you know, if you have this kind of like society and it would be like extremely successful, it would be neat too, because like, what's the thing you always hear is like, your society's never been tried before. And I'm like, well, we're fucking trying, aren't we?
I mean, if you look at old, like, you look at some of the first incarnations of some certain societies, it was very much like that.
Yeah.
People had to be productive in order to contribute. I mean, what was it? Even the first colonists kind of had to operate that way.
Yeah. Well, a lot of societies, like, you know, you kind of look into it, and then like the more we went into more government, the more society tends to just fucking fail. But
government is not. I mean, for you to know my background in like ministry and church and stuff, government is like church. Everything was great in the beginning when people were like in communities, they were helping each other out, they were contributing to each other, and then they were like, hey, let's organize this thing. and then church happened, and then religion happened, and then holy crap.
Yeah.
Now we have this monster. Now we have a pope that was just as powerful as any man on the planet at one point, you know. So then the same thing with government. You know, we had tribes, we had huts, we got together, and then we were like, hey, let's elect people to like lead us. And then like, which is fine. You want to do that. And then now you have bureaucracy.
Yeah.
This first world concept that's basically a nice way of saying a huge system full of middlemen.
Yeah, it's just nuts. Okay, we have 2 more points. This number 5 is cooperatives. Instead of Social Security and Medicare, taxes coming directly out of the pay of all Americans, those who wish to join together in a cooperative effort of investment or insurance purchasing would be free to, and those who didn't would be free not to participate. Group investment cooperatives could offer future planning for Americans. Competing cooperatives could offer higher, and there's competition again. Competing cooperatives could offer high and low risk packages with differing returns. Group insurance packages could also be purchased by a cooperative, similar to the way which employers now participate in group packages through private insurance companies. This is something I've always said is like, if Social Security is so effective, like, or such, like, why can't you choose to participate and choose to decline? Part of that is because the government needs to be able to rob from the Social Security fund, but you know, it's like if what you are paying into or what you're receiving later in life is just supposed to be what you paid into, like, why can't you choose to do that or decline to do that? Like, why does the government force you to?
Well, in reality, no one really keeps track of like what is happening to their dollar.
Oh, no, of course not.
I mean, I don't know if you guys heard about the Cardi B situation where she did like a whole Twitter video about like, she's like, when I give money to a starving child in Africa, I get pictures, I get letters, I'm told where my money goes. She's like, why don't I get that with my tax return? Where's my money going? You know, of course, she's talking the way she's talking as a some celebrity, but I mean, it was just funny. Like, it's true. No one really looks into how their dollar is spent, and I think when you have these communities that are funding and sort of taking care of themselves, they take pride in where their dollar is going. They know what it's doing. I mean, like, you know, with the usage, the actual usage fees, you can actually know I'm paying for my own fire service, my own police, my own roads. I'm paying for my own car, my own insurance. I have all these things that I know I'm paying for. What I know I need and what I need to operate. I pay to people, they provide a service because it is incentivized for them to provide a good service. So I know all this, but then if I don't know and I'm not even like conditioned to really care, I'm just okay with my taxes being taken out and I get a return, and that's like, extra money, when in reality it's just, this is the money we think we don't need.
This is the money. The tax returns are the government giving you, like, okay, what it is you're giving the government an interest-free loan for a year,
paying you back.
Yeah, and then they're giving you back what, I'm like, you're getting back, because everybody's like, yay, tax return. And I'm like, why are you so excited to get your own money back? Like, that should not be a thing.
And that's the thing. We're conditioned to think that because we're so detached with understanding our money, I mean, just cracking the joke, like, have you guys ever had savings bonds before? Those little treasury bonds that you can get?
Yeah, I've never done that, no.
Like, usually, like, way back when, like my grandparents got me some, my parents got me some. Like, they basically, like, double in value after, like, 50 years or whatever. I don't know. There's, like, an interest rate on them. And where basically you're loaning out to the government, and then the government pays you an interest, which is, like, a super low-risk investment.
Yeah.
So I've tried, like, figuring out where I could, like, get these cashed. From the, like, one was in 93, another one was like in 96. So I went to go cash these, and some banks are okay with it, some banks won't. And then so I thought, well, let me call the Federal Reserve, because this is where they came from. So I called the Minneapolis Federal Reserve and asked them, where can I cash these? They said, technically you can cash them at any bank, but the bank reserves the right to refuse if they want. And I was like, well, how am I going to know? They go, well, it depends upon your bank. You can ask. So then I was like, well, can I take it to you guys? And they're like, no, you can't come here. I'm like, because I'm thinking Federal Reserve Bank in my head. I'm thinking the bank. Upon further research, they're like, yeah, you can do like a tour, but we can't cash these for you. And I'm like, gee, why can't I go into the Federal Reserve? And I'm talking to Brooke, and I'm like, I know what they're doing in there. They're devaluing our currency. You don't want me to see that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, but I mean, that's just,
there's a meme in there somewhere. I mean,
yeah, people don't know that. They're just like, oh, the Federal Reserve, that's where they print money, maybe, or something, or that's where like bonds come out of. And
there's people who legitimately think that's where money comes from, like, in general. Like, that's how money exists.
We know it comes from the mint, but we also know the reserve kind of controls the flow of money too. Yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, but in reality, they determine the value of our currency via fiat. Did
you guys see this thing where the South African president wants to print more money so everybody in his country will be rich?
Yep, I saw that.
I mean,
yeah, I'm like, hey, the next headline we're going to see is South Africa is in complete ruins.
I mean, isn't it the same, like, if you print more books, more people will be literate?
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that works so well for post-World War I Germany. Let's totally destroy Africa.
Well, I mean, we could get into other issues as to why they're really going to fail, because they're thinking we need to reclaim all the land and kick out all the white people, like a certain other African.
There are people who are totally for that. It's so disturbing. You know what? That's a whole other live stream. So, but cooperatives, though, like, overall, what do you guys like? Yay or nay? Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, I mean, cooperatives. I mean, that's basically sort of like a name you would put on like these collective group companies and cities that would run this. So you could have like a region or a group of cities all run by a group of companies. So it's not just like, I don't know, Minneapolis Fire Department as a company. You actually have Minnesota Metropolitan Area Fire Services, and they have franchise fire departments, and they all like charge fees or whatever for services.
Yeah.
Well,
and I would say, like, because it kind of goes back to like the usage fee thing we're talking about. but like this is kind of that on in a different area, like pertaining to other stuff, like health insurance or like Social Security and stuff. But I think overall, like it's hard to argue against like being allowed to opt out like of a government service. It seems ridiculous that and what I frequently say, good ideas don't require force. I think we have like more than one meme that says that. But good ideas don't require force. If Social Security is so fantastic, why do they have to force people into the program?
I mean, it's not even just forcing people. If it's such a great product, how come no one really knows how it works?
That too, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the sign of a good product is recognition. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows what a McChicken and a McDouble is, mm-hmm. but no one knows. No one knows what a double E savings bond is.
Yeah, of course not. No. Okay. Got one final point, and number 6, and then I'm going to do like a kind of a recap. Not a recap, just like a review real quick. The final point is land sale. Local, state, and federal governments own a lot of land. Much of it is land that is not needed. Governments could sell this land or even hold a lottery for parcels of land or any unused government real estate. This revenue could be used to generate revenue for one-time projects such as funding the building of a new road or courthouse. Considering that in a libertarian republic, the government would have a much more limited role, these are more than adequate means to generate revenue. A libertarian republic's government would provide national security, a justice system to protect people's rights, a civil law system to enforce contracts, and the provision of infrastructure for those means. Services and like this last bit I'm reading is an overall for everything. Services and infrastructure beyond that would be provided privately whenever possible, if not left to localities and funded only through the methods above. Real quick, one of the things for the land sale, why I say that's a good idea is the government does own a shitload of land that it does nothing with. So if they are selling off all this land, for one, like, people, if you auction it or lottery it, you're going to get more money that way. It would bring in a lot of money. And then just think about how much that land would actually probably get used now, or could be turned into something profitable or functionable.
Well,
go ahead.
The biggest argument against that is that, a lot of the land that the government owns is like national parks. Mm-hmm. And the biggest argument against that is if they were to sell it to, a private group or whatever, they would just put buildings on it and turn it into businesses or whatever. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, they can choose who they sell it to, and they can ensure that, it's going to, they can choose to sell it to someone who would upkeep it and, have it for the same purpose, a national park. But that's always like the main argument that's always brought up against that, and I think it's incredibly annoying.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it, to be honest. Like myself personally, I feel like it sounds like a great idea. And like you said, the government would be allowed to choose who they sell it to, so somebody just doesn't turn it into like a fucking landfill or something. But like, why the hell not? I mean, there is unused land the government owns that they could totally just sell off and be like, hey, do something with this. Why the fuck not? It brings in money, helps fund some projects. Now, real quick, I'm going to have to wrap up this stream because I need to go lay down. My head is spinning. And I'm sorry I have to cut this one short, but it's been a great conversation so far, even if I was like not understanding some stuff we were talking about earlier. I want to recap these 6 things, and then I would like us to choose which one out of the 6 we would be most in favor of if we had to pick one, and least in favor of. I'm sure we are all going to agree on the least in favor of, or at least most of us will. Okay, so to remind everybody, there is the lottery, consumption tax, voluntary tax, usage fee, cooperatives, and land sale. Now, first, I'd like to discuss on if we had to pick one, which one we'd be most in favor of. Now, going off the conversations we had and how much in depth we went into on this specific one and how much sense it seems to make, I would say if I had to pick one, I would go for usage fee. So Amos, you go, and then Mike.
Huh? What are the three options again?
There's 6.
6 options.
Lottery. And I thought I was out. No. Lottery, consumption tax, voluntary tax, usage fee, cooperatives, land sale. If you forget any of them, I can give you a quick rundown. But yeah.
Well, yeah, the usage one.
Yeah, that was my pick too. So usage fee. Mike, if you had to pick one.
Either usage fee or consumption tax. I'm leaning more towards usage fee.
Okay. So for me, if I had to pick one, I would be not okay with. Based off of our discussions, I would have to say consumption tax is my least favorite. Amos?
Anything with the word tax in it.
No, I feel like the voluntary tax.
Still tax.
Well, I feel like using the word tax is unfair to it because, like we said, it would be more of donation or pooling your money.
Who's going to pay it?
Well, that's the whole thing we had. Is part of the voluntary tax is people. You were making the argument for paying for services you need. So that's where I feel like.
Yeah, but we're seeing that as a usage thing.
I feel like voluntary tax ties into the usage fee. So.
But I think when it's applied as a tax,
mm-hmm.
There's no accountability to where it's going. Whereas a usage is, I need this, I'm going to use this.
That's where I would say that using the word tax is unfair for that argument.
Right.
So
like I'm not paying a cell phone tax. I'm actually paying a cell phone bill.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like tax is the wrong word for what they were saying, what the argument they were trying to make.
It's a bad word. Yeah,
consumption tax, based off of the points that you were bringing up, Amos, would be the one I am the least in favor of. And I kind of figured that was going to be your least favorite too. Mike, what would you say is your least favorite?
My least favorite is voluntary tax because no one's going to want to pay it.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, if you left it up, it goes back to what I was saying before. All those people who say, well, I have no problem paying a little extra. Okay, well, put your money where your mouth is and pay a little extra then. They're not going to do it.
That's what I always say is
hate that elitist crap.
I have friends who are like, taxes are important and we need taxes. And I'm like, okay, why don't you pay, if you have money left over at the end of the month, why don't you pay more taxes and why don't you decline your tax return? Why would you not do that if you feel it's so important? And then here's the thing I always bring up too. And typically people will give you a very bullshit answer. But if tomorrow to file, taxes became completely voluntary, and to file taxes, you had to go out of your way and you had to be the one to take the taxes out of your check, send it into the government. They didn't do it automatically for you. So many people that make the argument for taxes would immediately stop paying taxes.
Yep.
And think of it this way too. You know who would actually pay taxes? Right-wingers might actually pay more taxes.
They might, yeah.
Because it's been shown that conservatives, Republican, right-leaning people tend to be more giving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they would probably have a higher likelihood of actually paying their taxes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But just any person who's super pro taxes. Now, okay, there would be some who would do it. but the majority of them wouldn't go out of their way to pay taxes, because for one thing, they'd suddenly have this larger amount of money each month, and it would be very hard for them to part with that.
Holy crap! I have 20% of my paycheck now.
Yeah, and
more,
like overnight,
20%.
Yeah, overnight you'd have all these liberals suddenly becoming libertarian, like, because they'd be like, "Holy shit, this is great! I get to keep my money," and their whole the needy people need our taxes and stuff like that, and like all that would just go out the window overnight.
Why people aren't libertarians seeing their first paycheck is beyond me.
Yes. Yeah. It's nuts. It's nuts. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna cut the stream short tonight just because I'm not feeling well. I'm glad we had an hour and a half discussion, so I'm glad we were able to do that. And I feel like it was a good one. But we probably got a little bit different from where I wanted to get originally, but I wanted to bring up funding taxes, funding stuff, government stuff voluntarily, and I think we did cover that pretty well. So if you guys have any kind of last minute points you want to make, feel free to bring them up. Just so everybody watching knows, next week, Tuesday is going to be the alt-right debate. Thursday is the ANCOM debate. I actually have an alt-right person coming on Tuesday and an ANCOM person coming on Thursday. I'm trying to get more than just one, trying to get at least two people. They're going to be a lot more focused. I'm not going to have as many people on the panel. I'm going to be moderating, so I will not be debating. I'm going to be moderating, and I'm trying to get at least two people on each side. So I'm going to be very particular about who gets to come on, because I want to try to remain civil as possible.
Right.
If you want to come on, let me know. If I tell you can't come on, do not take offense to it. I'm being very picky. Some people are just going to have to sit it out. But Mike is for sure going to. You were doing the alt-right one, right, Mike?
Yes, I'll be there Tuesday.
So I might have some people doing the ANCOM on. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'm willing to, if people want to join, let me know. But please don't get offended if I decline. This will not be the only one. I'm hoping we can do more in the future. And if you don't get to come to the first one, hopefully you get to do the second one. I want to get more of these debates going. I would like the idea of getting some actual, legit debates going. So yeah, that's happening next week. I'll put out the schedule Saturday or Sunday. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. is the mental health discussion. So that's pretty much open to anybody. If you want to be on the panel, you're more than welcome to join. The topic for tomorrow night will be using creativity as a method of coping with mental health, like depression or anxiety or PTSD. And yeah, so that is an open panel. Anybody that wants to join is more than welcome to. We will not be discussing politics or religion, so it's going to be strictly just mental health. I do not.
Since when did we discuss religion?
We don't, but people like to bring that. Okay, I've moderated several online.
Actually, let's try to wrap up the stream before we talk about anything else, just to keep it coherent.
Well, just real quick, I've moderated several mental health support groups online, and people always want to bring up religion for some reason. I'm like, don't do that. It's not a good idea when you're dealing with a bunch of people with mental health issues, because it's a very divisive thing. But yeah, so Amos, if you have any last minute things you want to bring up that we discussed today.
Taxation is theft.
Yes.
What's so funny, Mike? It's true.
It's a given. Known fact.
And I think I don't know. Taxation is theft. I think freedom. Freedom is the most important aspect when it comes to how money is spent, and I think it's you need to be. I mean, I'm really strong on the idea of this usage fee. Basically, you're paying what you're using, because I think that's the most practical, the most fair. And if you can't afford to do things, you just don't do them. Yeah,
I feel like if we're going to sum up the stream, that's a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean. That kind of flies in the face of certain other libertarian policies, I think. Because we believe in property rights, but then we'll also believe in the free movement of people.
This, I think,
that's a whole nother thing.
Taking out usage fees and really diving into it with some people who disagree with it too would be a great live stream. Like just going into usage fees. We can. I mean, put a pin in that one for a future.
Yeah, stream. I could throw out the whole thing. Like for example, in Taiwan, when I was there, you paid for your cell phone bill was paid by what you used, not paid by what your plan was.
That's how it should be, to be honest.
Right.
It's insane that you pay.
But then here,
yeah.
I mean, it's still affordable in some. In a lot of cases.
No, yeah. I mean, I can afford my cell phone bill, but I know I'm paying for things I don't ever use.
Right.
Stupid.
But anyways, all right.
Okay, so Mike, do you have any kind of last words or things to wrap up the stream on? What we talked about?
I think a voluntary tax would bring out the hypocrisy of all the tax-loving statists.
Usage fees.
Why should I have to pay into this? Yeah. Well, you were doing it before, but now you're given the option and you don't want to do it? Okay.
I say we have a
for usage fees, though. Like, you feel like that's a good, like, if we were going to go into voluntary funding things, I would have to say usage fees.
On the other hand,
the most logical one. Yeah, go ahead.
On the other hand, I think that if it was voluntary, I think people would be more mindful of what their taxes actually go towards.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I feel like that's where usage fees would be. Usage fees to me plays into the voluntary tax thing. Is you're voluntarily paying for stuff. You're choosing to pay for stuff. But if you are specifically paying for specific services, you know exactly what your tax dollars are going towards. And I don't like using the word tax because your fees, I guess, you know what you're paying for. And you have the option to decline to pay for certain services, to decline from those services.
Amos, I am not a big fan of this discretionary tax that you have proposed, a ginger tax. I think this is equivalent to public tax from the 19th century.
I mean, you guys literally steal souls. You need to be taxed.
Josie's gonna get you, man.
Life.
I don't care.
Part of life.
She's gonna come after you now.
I was born this way.
I always think of that episode of South Park where they Cartman's like super anti-ginger, and then they turn him into a ginger, and he's like, "Red power."
Yeah,
that's one of my all-time favorite episodes.
That's one of the best episodes.
It's hilarious. He's all like ready to just kill everybody, and then Kyle whispers to him, he's like, "What?"
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine like a truly privatized system, let's say in like healthcare, and obese people have to pay more?
Just think about it though. If you were paying healthcare, you're paying for what you use and stuff like that.
Well, you're paying. They would have you pay based upon your risk factors.
Yeah, they would.
I mean, health. Like when I sign for healthcare at work, you already have to pay more if you're a smoker.
Yeah, that's another thing too.
So why can't you pay more if you're ginger?
I was about to say it's a whole other discussion, but I don't see why a ginger should have to pay more when there are so few of us.
I mean, that is why, because you're an exception.
I would argue there are more Happas than gingers.
Oh, fucking
in this country. You have a Happa tax.
Hey, we're the model minority times 2. We are both white and Asian.
All right, yeah, I gotta wrap this up before we but I'm like seriously, I need to go lay down before I just pass out.
One of my favorite Asian memes.
We had a great discussion tonight. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, and then also just so people know, Sunday, me and Jason are not doing our usual stream. we're actually going to be recording a podcast with somebody. So I will put out information for that. So do not look for our stream on Sunday. I will let everybody know when the podcast comes out because it's not going to come out on Sunday. It comes out at a later date. We're just recording it on Sunday.
Who is it with?
Aaron Miller.
Don't know who that is.
He's fuck, hold on one sec. He does stuff for Think Liberty. He works with Think Liberty. I don't know what his function at Think Liberty is.
And the stream. And the stream.
Yeah, I need to.
And the stream.
All right. So shit, I just did something weird on my computer. All right. So thank you for joining everybody. And I will let's see. Yeah, tomorrow night if you want to join. 9 o'clock, same time as usual. Good night, everyone.
Okay. Night.